My name is Claire, and at 28 years old, I was prepared for any excuse about why my sister Sophie couldn't invite me to her wedding, budget constraints, venue limitations, anything but the truth. When I called to ask about the date, she casually replied, "Oh, it was yesterday. You didn't make the list." Those 7 words destroyed me in ways I'm still discovering. But exactly 1 week later, my phone rang at midnight with Sophie sobbing on the other end, and everything I thought I knew about her perfect new life came crashing down. If you've ever been the family member everyone forgets until disaster strikes, drop a comment below and hit subscribe to find out why being excluded from the wedding saved my life. The cursor on my computer screen blinked accusingly at me, waiting for input on the architectural draft that was due by end of day. But my mind wasn't on load-bearing walls or sustainable materials. It was on the small velvet box sitting in my desk drawer, the one containing the vintage pearl earrings I'd found at an estate sale 3 months ago. They were perfect for Sophie. Classic, elegant, with just enough sparkle to match her Instagram-worthy life. I'd spent more than I should have on them, skipping lunch for 2 weeks to make up for the expense, but weddings only happen once, right? My name is Claire Matthews, and at 28, I've learned to accept my role in the family hierarchy. While my younger sister Sophie floated through life on a cloud of compliments and credit cards, I'd been grinding away at Brennan and Associates architecture firm for the past 5 years, slowly climbing from intern to junior architect. My apartment was modest, a 1-bedroom in a building where the elevator worked 60% of the time, but it was mine, paid for with my own sweat and overtime hours. Sophie, on the other hand, lived in a glass tower downtown, courtesy of what she called brand partnerships, but what looked to me like taking pictures of herself holding teeth-whitening kits and protein shakes. 26 years old, and she had 40,000 followers who hung on her every filtered word. Our mother, Linda, couldn't be prouder. Sophie's building an empire. She'd tell anyone who'd listen at her book club. When they asked about me, she'd add, almost as an afterthought, "Claire works in an office." Something with buildings. The favoritism wasn't new. It started the day Sophie was born, 2 years after me. I still remember being told to be quiet, the baby sleeping so often that I learned to walk on the balls of my feet, a habit I still have. Birthday parties were Sophie's elaborate productions, princess themes, pony rides, custom cakes that cost more than our monthly groceries. Mine were family dinners at home with a store-bought cake. "You're the mature one," Mom would say, as if maturity was something I'd chosen at age 7. But none of that mattered anymore. Sophie was getting married to Daniel Chun, a entrepreneur/investor/whatever sounded impressive at parties, and despite everything, I was genuinely happy for her. She'd been dating him for 18 months, and he seemed to adore her. His Instagram was full of pictures of them at rooftop bars, weekend trips to Napa, surprise bouquets of roses that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He was handsome in that calculated way, gym-sculpted arms, professionally whitened teeth, the kind of tan that came from actual vacations, not spray bottles. I'd been saving for her wedding gift since she'd announced the engagement 6 months ago. $20 here, $50 there, tucked away in an envelope marked S's big day. The earrings had been a serendipitous find. The elderly woman at the estate sale had told me they belonged to her mother, who wore them on her own wedding day in 1952. "They should go to someone who understands our value," she'd said, and somehow, I'd convinced her I was that person. It was a Thursday afternoon when I finally decided to call Sophie. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Not unusual for us, but with the wedding presumably approaching, I needed to request time off from work. My boss, Mr. Brennan, was a stickler for advance notice, and good sisters showed up for weddings, even when they'd spent most of their lives in the shadows. I dialed her number, listening to her custom ringback tone, some pop song about being blessed and highly favored. She picked up on the 4th ring, slightly breathless. "Claire?
Hi.
I'm literally just about to run into a meeting with a potential sponsor. What's up?" Her voice had that practiced casualness she'd perfected over the years, the tone that suggested she was doing you a favor by answering at all. "Hey, Sophie. Quick question. When's the wedding date? I need to put in my time off request at work, and you know how Brennan is about." "Oh." She cut me off and I heard her laugh, but it wasn't a warm sound. Oh, Claire. It was yesterday. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear to look at it, as if the device itself had malfunctioned. I'm sorry, what? The wedding. It was yesterday. Just a small thing, you know? Private. Intimate. We only invited people who really mattered to the overall vibe we were going for. People who mattered. The phrase lodged itself in my chest like a shard of glass. You're joking, I said, though I knew Sophie well enough to recognize that particular tone of cruel nonchalance. Why would I joke about that? Look, Daniel and I decided we wanted to keep it exclusive. Quality over quantity. You understand, right? I mean, we haven't exactly been close, and I didn't want any awkwardness on my special day. Awkwardness. As if my presence, her only sibling's presence, would have been some kind of social contamination. Sophie, I'm your sister. Half the people there were more like family to me then. She caught herself, but the damage was done. Look, Claire, I really do have to run. The photographer just posted some shots on Instagram if you want to see them. They turned out amazing. Talk later. The line went dead. I sat at my desk, still holding the phone, staring at the architectural plans that had seemed so important 5 minutes ago. My hands were shaking. I opened Instagram with the mechanical movements of someone in shock, navigating to Sophie's profile. There they were. Dozens of photos already, posted in a carefully curated grid. Sophie in a $10,000 dress I recognized from her Pinterest board. Daniel in a custom suit, their wedding party laughing on a sunset beach. I scrolled through the faces, her college roommates, her yoga instructor, people I'd never even heard her mention. Our cousins from Portland were there. Mom's best friend Sandra. Even Dad's sister Aunt Janet, who Sophie had always claimed to hate. And in the center of it all, our mother, beaming in a mother-of-the-bride dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, holding Sophie's hand, tears streaming down her face in photo after perfect photo. Our mother, who hadn't even called to tell me it was happening. I closed Instagram and opened my desk drawer, staring at the velvet box. The earrings seemed to mock me now, their pearls gleaming with inherited significance that would never be passed on. I picked up the box, feeling its weight, then set it down again, then picked it up, then threw it back in the drawer hard enough that I heard something else shift and fall. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. I must have responded to emails, must have made the corrections Brennan requested on the Morrison project, but I couldn't tell you what any of it was about. All I could think about was every slight, every dismissal, every time I'd been pushed aside for Sophie's spotlight. The Christmas when I was 12 and Sophie was 10, when I'd spent months learning to play Silent Night on the guitar to perform for the family, only to be upstaged by Sophie's last-minute decision to sing All I Want for Christmas Is You, complete with choreography she'd learned from YouTube that afternoon. Mom had filmed every second of Sophie's performance. She'd forgotten to charge the camera battery by the time I played. My high school graduation, where Mom left early because Sophie had an emergency at her middle school dance recital, which turned out to be a costume malfunction that the teacher had already fixed. The time I'd gotten promoted to junior architect, calling Mom with the news, only to have her cut me off because Sophie had just reached 10,000 Instagram followers and they were going out to celebrate. But this was different. This was deliberate. Calculated. Sophie had looked at her wedding guest list and made a conscious decision that I wasn't worth including. And our mother had gone along with it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Saw you viewed Sophie's photos. Weren't they beautiful? The venue was absolutely perfect.
No apology. No explanation.
Just casual cruelty wrapped in exclamation points. I didn't respond. Instead, I finished my work, submitted my files, and walked home in the November drizzle without an umbrella, letting the rain soak through my jacket. By the time I reached my apartment, I was shivering, but it wasn't from the cold. I sat on my couch, still in my wet clothes, and pulled out my phone again. The photos were still there, of course. Sophie laughing, Sophie dancing, Sophie cutting the cake, Sophie throwing the bouquet to a crowd of people who weren't me. I zoomed in on one photo, a group shot of the family table. There was an empty chair next to Mom. Had that been where I would have sat? Or had they not even bothered to consider my place at all? I thought about calling Mom, demanding an explanation. I thought about commenting on Sophie's posts, letting all 40,000 of her followers know exactly what kind of person she was. I thought about a lot of things, but in the end, I did none of them. Instead, I went to my closet and pulled out the dress I'd bought 6 months ago when Sophie first announced her engagement, a tasteful navy blue cocktail dress that I'd imagined wearing as the proud sister of the bride. It still had the tags on it. I held it up to myself in the mirror, then carefully hung it back up. That night, I made myself a dinner of microwave ramen and cheap wine, eating alone at my small kitchen table. I thought about Sophie and Daniel, probably on their honeymoon by now, Bali, she'd mentioned once, or maybe the Maldives. Somewhere with clear water and infinity pools and couples massages. I raised my glass of wine to the empty apartment. To the people who matter, I said to no one, and the bitterness in my voice surprised even me. But underneath the hurt, underneath the anger and rejection and years of accumulated dismissals, something else was stirring. A quiet resolve. A decision forming in the back of my mind. Sophie had made her choice. She'd drawn her line in the sand, decided who belonged in her life and who didn't. She thought she could hurt me one more time, and I'd just take it like I always had. That I'd swallow this indignity like I'd swallowed all the others, that I'd continue to exist on the periphery of her life, grateful for whatever scraps of acknowledgement she threw my way. She was wrong. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have a plan. But I knew that something had shifted, fundamentally and irrevocably. Sophie had finally pushed too far. I went to bed that night without checking Instagram again, without responding to Mom's text, without shedding a single tear. I lay in the dark, listening to the rain against my window, and made myself a promise. She may have excluded me, but she wouldn't break me. And someday, somehow, she'd understand what she'd thrown away. I just didn't know that someday would come so soon. 7 days. That's how long it took for karma to come calling. I was at my desk, reviewing structural specifications for a new mixed-use development, when my phone lit up with Sophie's contact photo, a selfie she'd taken at some influencer event, all perfect contouring and strategic lighting. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking a petty satisfaction in making her wait. Hello. I kept my voice neutral, professional, as if she were a client calling about a project. Claire. Her voice was different. Gone was the casual dismissiveness from last week. This was high-pitched, strained, with an undercurrent of something I'd never heard from Sophie before, desperation. Thank God you answered. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I glanced at my phone. No missed calls. But I didn't call her out on the lie. What do you need, Sophie? There was a pause, the sound of her taking a shaky breath. Did you transfer the rent money? I actually pulled the phone away from my ear to stare at it just like I had a week ago. But for an entirely different reason. I'm sorry, what?
The rent.
For this month. Did you transfer it? Because the landlord's saying they haven't received anything, and I thought maybe there was a delay with the bank or… Sophie. I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. Why would I transfer your rent money? Another pause. I could practically hear her scrambling for the right words, the right angle to play this. Because you always… I mean, we're family and… Family? The word came out sharp enough to cut. Like the family you invited to your wedding? Claire, please. This isn't the time for… For what? For pointing out that a week ago you told me I didn't matter enough to include in your intimate celebration? And now you're calling me about rent money? I heard her swallow hard. Things are complicated right now. Complicated. I repeated the word, tasting its inadequacy. Sophie, you just got married. You just had what Instagram suggests was a $50,000 wedding. You posted pictures from your honeymoon suite at the St. Regis. And you're calling me about rent. Daniel's business is in a transition period. We had some unexpected expenses with the wedding, and… Stop. I stood up from my desk, needing to move, to pace, to do something with the anger that was building in my chest. Just stop. You excluded me from your wedding, Sophie. Your own sister. And now you're calling me for money? It's not like that. Her voice cracked. You don't understand. Daniel said his investment would clear by now, but there were complications with the international transfer and… What investment? His startup. He's launching this revolutionary app that's going to change how people… It doesn't matter. The point is, the money's coming. It's just delayed, and we need… You need. I corrected. You need. Not we. There is no we here, Sophie. You made that very clear when you decided I wasn't worth inviting to your wedding. I heard her crying now, but it wasn't the pretty, delicate crying she performed for Instagram stories when she wanted sympathy. These were ugly, desperate sobs. Please, Claire. I'm begging you. It's just $3,000. I'll pay you back as soon as… $3,000? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sophie, I make $68,000 a year before taxes. After rent, student loans, and basic living expenses, I save maybe $300 a month if I'm lucky. The wedding gift I bought you, that I'll now be returning, took me 3 months to save for. You bought me a wedding gift? Her voice went small, and for a moment, she almost sounded like the little sister I used to protect from nightmares. Pearl earrings. Vintage. From an estate sale. The woman said they'd been in her family for generations, that they should go to someone who understood their value. I laughed bitterly. Guess I was wrong about that. The crying got worse. Claire, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The wedding. Daniel said. He said it would be better if we kept it small, that too many people would complicate things, and Mom agreed, and… Mom agreed. I repeated. Of course she did. My phone buzzed with another call coming in.
Mom.
Speaking of which, she's calling me right now. Should I take it? No. Sophie's panic was immediate. Please, don't tell her about this. She doesn't know about the rent situation. She thinks everything's perfect. Doesn't she co-sign your lease? Silence. Sophie, doesn't Mom co-sign your lease? Yes. But she doesn't need to know about this. It's just a temporary situation. I took a deep breath, trying to process this information. Our mother, who lived on a fixed income from Dad's life insurance and her pension from teaching, had co-signed Sophie's luxury apartment lease.
Of course she had.
I have to go, I said. I have actual work to do. Claire, wait. I hung up. Mom called 3 more times that afternoon. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail after the 3rd attempt, and against my better judgment, I listened to it. Claire, sweetie, it's Mom. Sophie called me very upset. I don't know what happened between you two, but you need to fix this. She's your sister, and she's just starting her married life. This is supposed to be a happy time for her. Whatever petty grievance you have, you need to let it go and help her. Call me back. Petty grievance. That's what my exclusion from my only sibling's wedding had been reduced to. A petty grievance. I deleted the voicemail and tried to focus on my work, but concentration was impossible. My mind kept circling back to Sophie's call, to the desperation in her voice, to the casual cruelty of the past week. At 5:30, just as I was packing up to leave, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. Is this Claire Matthews? The voice was male, confident, with the kind of rehearsed charm that immediately put me on edge. Who's asking? This is Daniel. Daniel Chen, your brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law.
The term sat strangely in my mouth, like a food I was allergic to. What do you want, Daniel? Look, I know Sophie called you earlier, and things got emotional. Women, right? He laughed, expecting me to join in. I didn't. Anyway, I wanted to man-to-man this situation. I'm not a man. Right.
Sorry.
I meant adult to adult. No drama, no tears, just facts. Sophie and I are in a temporary cash flow situation. My company is about to close a major deal with some investors from Singapore, and we're talking serious money here. 7 figures minimum. But these things take time, and in the meantime, we need to maintain appearances. You understand how it is in business. Perception is everything. Is that why you had a $50,000 wedding you couldn't afford? His laugh was forced. Who says we couldn't afford it? Like I said, it's a cash flow issue. The money's there, it's just not liquid right now. And between you and me, Claire, You make what, $70K a year? $3,000 is nothing to you. $68,000. Before taxes. And $3,000 is not nothing to me. Come on. You're single, no kids, minimal expenses. You probably have savings just sitting in the bank doing nothing. This is a chance to help your sister, to invest in family. When my deal closes, I'll pay you back with interest. 20%. That's a better return than any bank would give you. The answer is no. His tone shifted, the charm evaporating. You know, Sophie told me you were jealous of her. That you've always resented her success, her happiness. I didn't believe it, but now I'm starting to see it. Sophie's success? You mean the sponsored posts she does for protein powder? The apartment she can't afford? The wedding you're now trying to get me to retroactively pay for? You don't know what you're talking about. Sophie is building a brand. She has influence. She has potential. What do you have? A desk job and a cheap apartment. I have dignity, I said. And a bank account that isn't overdrawn. Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went back to Sophie's Instagram. But this time, I didn't just look at the wedding photos. I went deeper, analyzing the posts from the past few months with a critical eye I'd never applied before. The designer bags that appeared in photos but never showed up again, rentals probably. The luxury hotel stays that were always tagged #hosted or #partnership. The expensive restaurant meals that only ever showed appetizers and drinks, never main courses. The carefully cropped apartment photos that never quite showed the full space. It was all smoke and mirrors. A carefully constructed facade that was, apparently, crumbling. I thought about calling her back. Part of me, the part that was still the big sister who used to check for monsters under her bed, wanted to help. But a larger part, the part that had been hurt and dismissed and relegated to the shadows for 28 years, held firm. Actions have consequences. It was something Dad used to say before he died, back when Sophie was 12 and I was 14. He'd been trying to teach her about responsibility after she'd spent her entire allowance on makeup and then cried about not having money for a school field trip. Mom had immediately given her the money, of course, but Dad had pulled me aside later. You understand why I didn't give in, right, Claire? He'd said. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Otherwise, they never learn. I'd understood then, and I understood now. But knowing you're doing the right thing doesn't make it feel any less awful when your phone won't stop buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from your sister. By midnight, I had 17 missed calls from Sophie, 6 from Mom, and 3 from unknown numbers that were probably Daniel. I had dozens of unread texts, ranging from pleading to angry to desperately apologetic. The last one, sent at 11:47 p.m., simply said, "I'm scared." I stared at those 2 words for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, thinking about Sophie and Daniel, about the wedding I hadn't attended, about the $3,000 I had in my savings account that could solve their immediate problem but wouldn't fix anything that was really broken. Around 3 a.m., I got up and opened my laptop. I started researching Daniel Chin, his supposed startup, his background, his financial history. What I found made my blood run cold. Daniel Chin had started 3 companies in the past 5 years. All of them had failed within months. He had a trail of unpaid debts, angry investors, and former business partners who described him in online forums with words like con artist and dangerous and stay away. And my sister had just married him. I thought about Sophie's tears on the phone, about the desperation in her voice. She wasn't just scared about rent. She was in trouble. Real trouble. But she'd chosen this. She'd chosen him, chosen the lifestyle, chosen to exclude me from her life until she needed something. I closed my laptop and made myself go back to bed. Tomorrow would bring new calls, new pleas, new pressure from Mom. But tonight I was done. I'd been excluded from the wedding. I'd be excluded from this crisis too. At least that's what I told myself. But as dawn light started creeping through my blinds, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That Sophie's desperate call wasn't just about rent, but about something much darker starting to surface. And despite everything, despite the hurt and anger and years of being second best, I was still her big sister. The question was, how much did that still matter? A week ago, Sophie had decided I didn't matter at all. Now, suddenly, I mattered $3,000 worth. The irony wasn't lost on me. But neither was the danger I was beginning to sense lurking behind Daniel's smooth words and Sophie's desperate tears. Something was very wrong in my sister's perfect Instagram life. And whether I wanted to or not, I was about to find out exactly what. The coffee shop was neutral territory. That's why I'd chosen it when Sophie texted me for the 15th time begging to meet in person. Not her glamorous apartment that I'd never been invited to, not my modest place that would highlight the differences between us, but a busy Starbucks downtown where the witnesses and background noise would keep things civil. She was already there when I arrived, hunched over a small table in the corner, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. Gone was the perfectly contoured makeup, the carefully styled hair, the designer athleisure that populated her Instagram feed. She looked thin, thinner than her wedding photos from 2 weeks ago, and her roots were showing, dark brown beneath the expensive blonde. Claire. She stood up too quickly, knocking over her water cup. As she scrambled for napkins, I noticed her hands shaking. Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would. I sat down slowly, studying her. You look terrible. She laughed, but it came out cracked. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm not here to make you feel better, Sophie. I'm here because I'm concerned. Not about your rent, about you. Her eyes filled with tears. The old Sophie would have been mortified to cry in public, would have worried about her mascara, about who might see. This Sophie didn't seem to care. It's bad, Claire. It's really bad. Tell me everything. And I mean everything. No Instagram filter, no spin. The truth. She took a shaky breath. The wedding cost $73,000. I nearly choked on the coffee I'd just sipped. $73,000? Sophie, that's more than I make in a year. I know. But Daniel said it was an investment. That the photos, the connections, the image, it would all pay for itself. He said his investors would be impressed, that it would help close his deals. What investors? What deals? I looked him up, Sophie. His last 3 companies. You looked him up? Her voice went sharp, defensive. Of course I did. After he called me talking about 7-figure deals from Singapore. Sophie, he's left a trail of failed businesses and angry investors. There are forum posts warning people about him. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the wooden stirrer she was breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. I know, she finally whispered. You know, I found out 3 days after the wedding. During our honeymoon, he was on his phone constantly, taking calls at 3 a.m., leaving the room to argue with people. I grabbed his phone while he was in the shower and... She trailed off, the stirrer now just splinters. What did you find? Emails. Dozens of emails. People threatening legal action. Someone named Marcus saying Daniel owed him $40,000. Another guy, Tony, saying the clock was ticking and that Daniel knew what would happen if he didn't pay. My blood went cold. Sophie, these sound like... I know what they sound like. She cut me off. But it gets worse. How could it possibly get worse? She pulled out her phone, glancing around nervously before showing me her banking app. The number at the top made my stomach drop. -12,000? I grabbed the phone, scrolling through the transactions. Sophie, these withdrawals. He has my passwords. All of them. Banking, credit cards, investment accounts, what little I had. He said it was what married couples did, complete transparency. But he's been draining everything. The sponsorship money I'd saved, the emergency fund Mom made me start, even the security deposit savings. You need to change your passwords immediately. I tried. He gets notifications. She pulled down the collar of her sweater slightly, revealing a bruise on her collarbone. He didn't mean to. He was just upset about the passwords. Said I was being secretive, that I didn't trust him. I reached across the table, but she flinched back. Sophie, this is abuse. Financial and physical. You need to leave. And go where? I can't afford the apartment without him. Mom co-signed the lease. If I default, she's on the hook for $24,000 for breaking it early. You know, she doesn't have that kind of money. Mom co-signed a lease that expensive? Sophie nodded miserably. She took out a loan against Dad's life insurance policy to help with the security deposit and first month's rent. She said it was an investment in my future. I felt sick. Our mother, living on a fixed income, had borrowed against the only financial security she had left for Sophie's Instagram-worthy lifestyle. There's more, Sophie continued. I've been getting calls. People looking for Daniel. Scary people, Claire. They come to the building. The doorman has turned away 3 different men this week. They know where I work or worked. I got fired yesterday for missing too many days. Why were you missing days? Daniel said I couldn't leave the apartment without him.
For my safety, he said.
But really, I think he didn't want me talking to anyone. I thought about the desperate texts, the frantic calls. She'd been a prisoner in her own home, reaching out to the sister she'd betrayed because she had nowhere else to turn. Sophie, we need to go to the police.
No.
Her voice was loud enough that other customers looked over. She lowered it to a whisper. No police. Daniel said if I involve the police, the people he owes will come after me. And Mom. He said they know where Mom lives. He's threatening Mom? Not directly. He just reminds me about how vulnerable she is living alone. How easy it would be for someone to break in. My hands clenched into fists under the table. I'm going to kill him. Claire, there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone. She looked around again, then leaned in closer. The wedding? Some of it was paid for with credit cards I didn't know about. Credit cards in whose name?
Mine.
He applied for them using my information. 6 different cards, all maxed out. Another $30,000 in debt under my name. That's identity theft. That's fraud. Sophie, these are federal crimes. That's not the worst part. She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse, sliding it across to me. I unfolded it. It was a loan agreement for $50,000 from something called Bridge Capital Investments with an interest rate that made my eyes water, 40% annually, compounded monthly. Sophie, this is a loan shark. This is... I looked at the signature line. Her name, but not her handwriting. He forged your signature? She nodded. I found it hidden in his laptop bag. The payment is due in 2 weeks. $50,000 plus interest. Claire, I don't have $50, let alone $50,000. I stared at the paper, my mind racing. This wasn't just financial trouble. This was dangerous, potentially life-threatening trouble. We need to get you out. Tonight. I can't. He tracks my phone. He has an app that shows him where I am at all times. The only reason I could meet you is because he thinks I'm at a job interview at the mall. Then leave your phone. We'll get you a new one. With what money? And where would I go? I can't go to Mom's. That's the first place he'd look, and I won't put her in danger. I can't afford a hotel. I have literally nothing, Claire. He even sold my engagement ring. Said it was being resized, but I found the pawn shop receipt. I thought about my small apartment, my carefully budgeted life, my $3,000 in savings that seemed both crucial and pathetically inadequate in the face of this disaster. You'll stay with me. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. Really? After everything? After the wedding? We'll deal with that later. Right now, we need to get you safe. Can you get out tonight? He has a poker game tonight. Usually doesn't get home until 3 or 4 a.m. If I left at midnight, I'll be waiting outside. Pack light, only essentials. Don't take anything he might notice is missing before you're gone.
Claire, I'm scared.
The men who are looking for him. What if they come after me anyway? I thought about the forum posts I'd read, the warnings about Daniel Chin. One phrase kept appearing. Dangerous when cornered. We'll figure it out. But first, we need to get you away from him. Sophie nodded, then reached into her purse again. I brought something. I don't know why, She pulled out a small velvet box. I recognized it immediately. The pearl earrings from the estate sale. How did you?
Mom.
She felt bad about the wedding. She went to your apartment when you weren't answering her calls, said she was worried. She saw them on your dresser with the gift receipt. She brought them to me, said you'd want me to have them even if you were angry. I stared at the box. Of course Mom had broken into my apartment. Of course she decided what I'd want without asking me. Keep them, I heard myself say. Maybe you can pawn them. You'll need money. Claire, I couldn't. Yes, you can. They're worth about $800. It's not much against what you owe, but it's something. She started crying again, clutching the box. I ruined everything. My whole life, I thought I was better than you. Prettier, more popular, more successful. But look at me. 26 years old, and my life is destroyed. You tried to warn me at the wedding. You didn't invite me to the wedding, remember? She flinched. I know. Daniel said, he said you'd judge him. That you'd see through him. He was right, wasn't he? You would have known immediately what he was. Maybe. Or maybe I would have been happy to see you happy and ignored the red flags. We'll never know. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Claire. For everything. For the wedding, for how Mom and I treated you, for… Save it, I said, but not unkindly. We need to focus on getting you out alive. Apologies can wait. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your sister owes us money. Family debts are family problems. Be smart. Sophie saw my face change. What is it? I showed her the text. Her face went white. They know about you. Oh God, Claire, I've dragged you into this. Hey. I grabbed her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were. I'm your big sister. This is what I do. Now let's think. Does Daniel have any documentation about these debts? Contracts, agreements, anything? Everything's on his laptop. He keeps it locked in a safe in the apartment. Do you know the combination? It's his birthday. But Claire, I can't. Yes, you can. Tonight, before you leave, photograph everything. Every document, every email, every text. We need evidence. What if he catches me? He won't. He'll be at poker. You can do this, Sophie. She nodded, trying to look brave. But I could see the terror in her eyes. There's something else, she said quietly. I heard him on the phone yesterday. He was talking about insurance. Life insurance. He wanted to know how long you have to be married before it pays out. The coffee shop suddenly felt very cold. Sophie, we're going to the police. Tonight. After I get you out. But he said. I don't care what he said. This is beyond threats now. He's dangerous. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Claire, stop being petty. Sophie needs our help. I'm going over there tonight to talk sense into both of them. No, I said out loud, already dialing Mom's number. She picked up on the first ring. Finally. Claire, your sister is… Mom, listen to me very carefully. Do not go to Sophie's apartment. Do not contact Daniel. Do not do anything. Don't be dramatic, Claire. This is just a little marital spat. Mom, Daniel has been physically abusing Sophie, stealing her money, and taking out fraudulent loans in her name. There are dangerous people looking for him. This is not a marital spat. Silence. Then, you're lying. You're just jealous that Sophie… I hung up and looked at Sophie. We need to get you out tonight. And we need to make sure Mom stays away. Sophie nodded, standing up on shaky legs. Midnight. I'll be ready. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Sophie, be careful. And if anything feels wrong, if he comes home early, if you sense any danger, run. Just run. Don't worry about evidence or clothes or anything. Just get out. She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. I sat in my car outside Sophie's building at 11:45 p.m., engine running, heat on full blast against the November cold. The luxury high-rise looked like something out of Sophie's Instagram dreams. All glass and steel and doormen in uniforms that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Every few minutes, I checked my phone. Nothing from Sophie yet. The plan was for her to text when she was heading down. My apartment was only 15 minutes away, but those would be the longest 15 minutes of our lives. At 11:58, my phone buzzed. He came home. My heart stopped. I called immediately, but it went to voicemail. I texted back. Get out.
Now.
No response. I waited 5 minutes.
10.
At 12:15, I made a decision that probably saved my sister's life. I called 911. 911. What's your emergency? I believe my sister is being held against her will by her abusive husband. She was trying to leave tonight, and he came home unexpectedly. The address is... Ma'am, has she told you she's being held against her will? She texted that he came home when she was trying to leave. He's been physically abusive. There are bruises. Without direct communication from the victim, we can't. I heard screaming in the background. Not from my phone, from the building. Even from the street, 15 floors down, I could hear it. That's her. I shouted into the phone. That's my sister screaming. Send someone now. The operator's tone changed immediately. Units are being dispatched. Stay on the line. But I couldn't. I dropped my phone and ran toward the building. The doorman tried to stop me, but I pushed past him, repeatedly jabbing the elevator button. When it finally arrived, those 30 seconds to the 15th floor felt like hours. I could hear them before the elevator doors even opened. Sophie's voice, high and terrified. Please, Daniel, just let me explain. His voice drunk and furious. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what you were doing? The crash of something breaking. I ran down the hallway, following the sounds to apartment 1512. The door was slightly open. Later, I'd learned Sophie had tried to run, and he'd dragged her back inside, not bothering to fully close it behind them. I pushed the door open to find a scene from a nightmare. The apartment, which should have been Instagram perfect with its floor-to-ceiling windows and designer furniture, was destroyed. Broken glass, overturned chairs, Sophie's clothes scattered everywhere from a suitcase that had been thrown against the wall. And in the middle of it all, Daniel had Sophie pinned against the kitchen counter, his hand wrapped around her throat. Let her go. I screamed. He turned, his eyes unfocused with alcohol and rage. Well, if it isn't the sister, come to save the day. You're too late. Your precious Sophie was trying to rob me. I wasn't, Sophie gasped, but his hand tightened, cutting off her words. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy crystal vase from the entry table, and held it like a weapon. Let her go. He laughed, but released Sophie, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. You going to hit me? Go ahead. Add assault to the charges. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, I said, keeping the vase raised, keeping myself between him and Sophie. Daniel Chen. Failed entrepreneur.
Con artist.
A man so desperate he's stealing from his wife and forging her signature on loan shark agreements. His face changed, the drunk bravado replaced by something colder. She told you. She told me everything. The fraudulent credit cards. The forged loans. The men looking for you. Did you really think you could get away with it? Did you think you could just drain her dry and disappear? It's none of your business. You made it my business when you threatened my family. I pulled out my phone with my free hand, showing him the text from the unknown number. Your creditors already found me. How long before they find you? For the first time, I saw fear flash across his face. They contacted you? Today. Which means they know about Sophie, about her family. You've put all of us in danger. I have it under control. No, you don't. Sophie struggled to her feet, her voice hoarse. You never did. It was all lies, all of it. The business, the investors, even the wedding, you paid for it with money you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. When you marry someone, what's yours becomes mine. That's not how it works when you forge signatures and commit fraud. I shot back. The sound of sirens cut through the night. Daniel's head snapped toward the window, and in that moment of distraction, Sophie made her move. She grabbed her phone from the counter and ran toward me. You called the cops? Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. You stupid bitch. You have no idea what you've done. They'll kill us all now. The people I owe, they don't forgive police involvement. Good thing you won't be here to see it, I said, backing toward the door with Sophie behind me. You'll be in jail. He lunged forward, but the crystal vase connected with his shoulder, sending him stumbling back. You're going to pay for this, he snarled. Both of you. You think you're safe? You think this ends with me getting arrested? I know where you live, Claire. I know where your mother lives. When I get out, and I will get out. The door burst open. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Everyone freeze. Hands where we can see them. I dropped the vase immediately, raising my hands. Sophie did the same. Daniel, in his drunken stupidity, tried to run for the bedroom, where, we'd later learn, he had a gun hidden in the safe along with the documents Sophie had been trying to photograph. He didn't make it 3 steps before he was on the ground, an officer's knee in his back, cuffs clicking around his wrists. Sophie Chun. One of the officers approached us. We received a call about a domestic disturbance. Why, yes, Sophie stammered. This is my husband. He attacked me. My sister was trying to help. The officer looked at Sophie's neck, where red marks were already turning to bruises. Ma'am, we need to get you medical attention. And we'll need statements from both of you. As the EMTs arrived and began checking Sophie, I watched Daniel being hauled to his feet. He caught my eye and smiled, a cold, predatory smile that made my skin crawl. This isn't over, he mouthed. But for once, I wasn't afraid. I stared right back at him. Yes, it is. The next 3 hours were a blur of police statements, medical examinations, and evidence collection. Sophie showed them everything. The bruises, the fraudulent documents she'd managed to photograph before Daniel came home, the threatening messages from his creditors. Detective Martinez, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took our statements separately. When she interviewed me, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Why didn't your sister leave sooner? She tried, I said. But he controlled everything. Her money, her phone, her movements. He isolated her from everyone, even excluded me from their wedding to keep me from seeing what he really was. And he threatened our mother. Said his creditors knew where she lived. The detective nodded, making notes. We see this pattern a lot. Abusers are experts at control. Your sister is lucky to have you.
Lucky.
I thought about the wedding I'd been excluded from, the years of being second best, the call for money that had started all this. Lucky seemed like the wrong word. What happens now? I asked. He'll be charged with domestic violence, assault, and based on what your sister's shown us, likely fraud and identity theft. Those are federal charges. He's looking at serious time. And the people he owes money to? Her expression darkened. That's a separate issue. Your sister should consider staying somewhere safe for a while. Maybe out of state. She's staying with me. Is that wise? He knows where you live. I thought about it. Then we'll both go somewhere else. Whatever it takes to keep her safe. When they finally released us at 4 a.m., Sophie was a shell of herself. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving only exhaustion and the beginning of what I recognized as shock. I drove her to my apartment in silence, helped her into my bed, and sat in the chair beside her until she fell asleep. At 6 a.m., my phone rang.
Mom.
Claire, I just saw the news. Daniel was arrested? What did you do? What did I do? I laughed bitterly. I saved your daughter's life, Mom. You're welcome. The news says domestic violence, fraud. This can't be true. Daniel is such a charming young man. Daniel is a con artist and an abuser who was strangling Sophie when I arrived. If I hadn't called the police, if I hadn't gotten there when I did, you'd be planning a funeral instead of dealing with your embarrassment. Silence. Then, quietly, is she okay?
No.
She's not okay. She's traumatized, in debt up to her eyeballs, and in danger from the people Daniel owes money to. But she's alive. I should come over.
No.
My voice was firm. Sophie needs rest and safety, not your criticism or denial. When she's ready to see you, she'll let you know. You can't keep me from my daughter. Your daughter is 26 years old, and makes her own decisions. And right now, she's decided she needs space. Respect that. I hung up before she could argue more. I spent the morning canceling Sophie's credit cards, changing her passwords, and filing fraud reports. Each call revealed more damage. Store credit cards I didn't know existed, payment apps drained of funds, even her frequent flyer miles converted to cash and withdrawn. Total damage, $127,000 in debt under Sophie's name. When Sophie woke up that afternoon, I showed her the numbers. She stared at them for a long moment, then said something I didn't expect. "It's just money. Sophie, this is your entire future." "No," she said firmly. "My entire future was almost dying last night. This." She gestured at the papers. "This is just debt.
It can be dealt with.
Bankruptcy, payment plans, whatever it takes. But I'm alive, Claire. You saved my life. You saved your own life when you decided to leave. I almost didn't." She pulled her knees to her chest, looking impossibly young. Even after everything, part of me wanted to stay. To believe he'd change. "That's sick, isn't it?" "That's abuse," I corrected. "It rewires your brain. Makes you doubt your own reality." How do you know so much about this?" I was quiet for a moment. "Remember Josh? My college boyfriend." Sophie looked surprised. "The pre-med student? Mom loved him." "Yeah, well, Mom didn't know he used to lock me in our apartment when he went out. Said it was for my own safety. She didn't know about the bruises I covered with makeup, or the way he'd convinced me I was crazy when I questioned him about other women. Claire, I had no idea."
Nobody did.
That was the point. It took me 2 years to leave, and another 3 in therapy to understand it wasn't my fault. I sat on the edge of the bed. "So no, Sophie, it's not sick that you wanted to stay. It's what abuse does to you. But you got out. That's what matters." She started crying then, not the dramatic sobs from before, but quiet, exhausted tears. "I ruined everything. The wedding you weren't invited to, God. I spent $70,000 to exclude my own sister from my life. And for what? For a man who was planning to kill me for insurance money. You didn't know. But I should have. You would have known. You tried to protect me our whole lives, and I repaid you by treating you like you were nothing." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "The wedding planner asked about siblings. I said I didn't have any." The words hit harder than I expected. I stood up, needing distance. "Claire, please. I need to check on something," I said, walking to the living room. But really, I just needed a moment to process the fact that Sophie hadn't just excluded me from the wedding. She'd erased me entirely. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "Your sister's husband owes us $50K plus interest. Husband or not, someone pays. You have 1 week." I stared at the message, then deleted it. We'd deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, my sister was safe. That had to be enough. But as I heard Sophie crying quietly in the bedroom, as I thought about the threats and the debt and the danger still lurking, I wondered if anything would ever be enough again. The fairy tale wedding had become a nightmare. And we were only just beginning to wake up. Daniel made bail in 36 hours. $50,000 cash, posted by a business associate nobody seemed to know anything about. Sophie found out when Detective Martinez called at 7 a.m., waking us both from the first decent sleep we'd had in days. "He's out." Sophie's voice cracked, her fingers white-knuckled around my phone. "How is he out?" I grabbed the phone, putting it on speaker. "Detective, he tried to kill her." "How could they let him out?" "First offense on the domestic violence charge, and his lawyer argued the fraud charges aren't substantiated yet. The judge set bail at $50,000. Someone posted it in cash yesterday afternoon."
Who?
I demanded. "The name on the paperwork is Vincent Zhao." "Know him?" Sophie shook her head, but I saw recognition flash in her eyes. She was lying. "There's a restraining order in place," the detective continued. "He can't come within 500 feet of Sophie, you, or your mother. If he violates it." "A piece of paper won't stop him," Sophie whispered. "If he violates it, call 911 immediately. We've flagged your addresses in the system. Officers will respond priority 1. After the detective hung up, I turned to Sophie. Who's Vincent Zhao? I don't know. Don't lie to me. Not now. She crumbled. He's one of the people Daniel owes money to. The big one. The $50,000 loan? That's his. And he bailed Daniel out? Why would? I stopped, the realization hitting me. He bailed him out so Daniel can get him the money. Or so he can kill him himself if he doesn't, Sophie said quietly. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. But this time there was a photo attached. Daniel, standing outside my apartment building, taken from across the street. The timestamp was from 20 minutes ago. The message read, "Restraining orders are just paper. Your sister knows what she has to do." I showed Sophie, whose face went pale. He's watching us. Not Daniel. This is from whoever took the photo. They're all watching us. I went to the window, scanning the street below. Normal morning traffic, people heading to work, nothing obviously threatening. But somewhere out there, someone was watching. We need to leave, I said. Pack what you need. We're going to a hotel. With what money? Claire, you've already done so much. I have $3,000 in savings. It'll buy us time to figure this out. As we threw clothes into bags, Sophie's phone rang. Daniel's lawyer. Don't answer. I started, but Sophie had already accepted the call. Mrs. Chen? This is Robert Sterling, your husband's attorney. I'm calling to inform you that Mr. Chen would like to discuss the division of assets. Sophie laughed bitterly. What assets? He stole everything I had. Mrs. Chen, California is a community property state. The debts incurred during your marriage are equally your responsibility. However, Mr. Chen is willing to take full responsibility for all debts in exchange for a few considerations. What considerations? I grabbed the phone from Sophie. Who is this? Claire Matthews, Sophie's sister. What does Daniel want? Mr. Chen is willing to assume all debts and disappear from Mrs. Chen's life permanently in exchange for two things. She drops all charges against him, and she provides him with $50,000 for his relocation expenses. Relocation expenses? I laughed. You mean paying off Vincent Zhao before he kills him? Silence. Then, I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Chen's personal affairs. You have 24 hours to consider the offer. After that, Mr. Chen will have no choice but to pursue his legal rights, including his claim to spousal support given Mrs. Chen's higher earning potential from her social media career. Her career that he destroyed? The accounts he drained. 24 hours, Ms. Matthews. He hung up. Sophie was shaking. Spousal support? He wants me to pay him. He's desperate. This Vincent Zhao probably gave him a deadline that matches ours. We checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, paying cash, registering under a fake name. The room smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams, but it was safe. Or safer, at least. That evening, Mom called Sophie's phone. Don't answer. I warned, but Sophie had already picked up. Mom, Sophie, honey. Daniel came by the house. We both froze. Sophie put it on speaker. When? I demanded. An hour ago. He was very upset, saying you'd turned Claire against him, that this was all a misunderstanding. He said if you'd just talk to him. Mom, there's a restraining order. He's not supposed to contact any of us.
Oh, that.
He explained that was just the police overreacting. You know how men can be when they drink. Your father had his moments too. Dad never strangled anyone. I shouted. Don't be dramatic, Claire. Daniel just wants to work things out. He loves Sophie. You should see how distraught he is. Mom. Sophie's voice was deadly calm. Did you tell him where we are? Well, he said he just wanted to send flowers to apologize. Emma, I told him you were staying with Claire, but Claire's apartment was empty when he went by, so I don't know where. I hung up on her. She told him. Sophie said unnecessarily. Our own mother told him. Before I could respond, a knock at the motel door made us both jump. Housekeeping, a voice called. We don't need anything, I called back. The knocking got louder. Open up, Sophie.
We know you're in there.
That wasn't housekeeping. The voice was male, accented, threatening. I grabbed Sophie's hand and my car keys. Bathroom window.
Now.
We climbed through the small window, dropping into the alley behind the motel. I could hear the door splintering as we ran for my car. We drove for an hour, checking constantly for anyone following us, before finally pulling into another motel 3 towns over. How did they find us? Sophie whispered. Daniel. He must be working with them now, using their resources to track us down.
My phone rang.
Detective Martinez. Claire? We just got a report of a break-in at a motel. The manager said 2 women matching your descriptions. That was us. They found us. Daniel's creditors. Where are you now? I hesitated. Could we trust anyone at this point? Safe. For now. Claire, you need to come in. Both of you. We can protect you. Can you? Because Daniel made bail and immediately violated the restraining order, and now we're being hunted by loan sharks. If you don't cooperate with law enforcement, we are cooperating, but we're also trying to stay alive. I hung up. Sophie was scrolling through her phone and suddenly gasped. Oh my God. She showed me her Instagram. Daniel had posted from her account a suicide note. My darling followers, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. The shame of my debts, the betrayal of my family, it's too much. Tell my husband I'm sorry. Tell my sister she won. The post already had hundreds of comments, people begging her not to do it, sending helpline numbers. He's setting up my suicide, Sophie whispered. If something happens to me, everyone will think I did it myself. I screenshot everything, sending it to Detective Martinez with a message. Daniel posted this from Sophie's account. He's planning something. Her response was immediate. Come in now. But before we could decide, Sophie's phone rang again. This time it was Daniel himself. Don't. I started, but Sophie answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, sweetheart. His voice was calm, controlled. The drunk rage from 2 nights ago was gone, replaced by something scarier. Daniel, there's a restraining order. I know, but I had to hear your voice one more time. You see, I'm in a bit of a situation. Vincent gave me 48 hours to pay him back. That was 36 hours ago. That's not my problem anymore. Oh, but it is. See, I took out that loan as a married man. That makes you liable too. And Vincent, he's not particular about who pays as long as someone does. The police. The police can't protect you from Vincent. But I can. All you have to do is meet me. Alone. We'll work something out. She's not meeting you anywhere, I interjected. Claire. How nice to hear from you. How's that apartment of yours? Still got that loose lock on the bedroom window. My blood ran cold. He'd been in my apartment. Oh, I left you a little present on your kitchen counter. You might want to have someone check on that. I immediately called my neighbor, Mrs. Chun, no relation, who had a spare key. Mrs. Chun, it's Claire. Can you look in my kitchen and tell me what's on the counter? But don't touch anything. I heard her walking, then a gasp. Claire, there's a knife. A big knife. And a photo of you and a young woman, but the woman's face is cut out. Sophie grabbed my arm. The photo was from her Instagram, one of the few of us together, from last Christmas. He'd cut her face out of it. Call the police, Mrs. Chun. Don't touch anything. I hung up and looked at Daniel still on Sophie's phone screen. He'd switched to video call, his face filling the screen with a cold smile. 48 hours, Sophie. After that, Vincent takes over. And he's not as sentimental as I am. The call ended. We spent the night in the car, parked in a 24-hour Walmart parking lot, taking turns keeping watch. Sophie couldn't stop staring at the fake suicide note Daniel had posted, reading the comments from concerned followers who had no idea they were participating in a potential murder setup. At dawn, my phone rang.
Mom.
Claire, the police were just here. They said Daniel broke into your apartment? Left some kind of threat. Mom, where are you? Are you safe? I'm fine. I'm at home. But Claire, they're saying Daniel is dangerous. That's not the man I met. He was so charming. Ted Bundy was charming too, Mom. Don't be ridiculous. Sophie just needs to talk to him. Work this out like adults. Mom, He posted a fake suicide note from her account. He's planning to kill her. Silence. Then, that's not possible. Check her Instagram yourself. I heard her fumbling with her phone, then a sharp intake of breath. This has to be a mistake. The only mistake was you telling him we were at my apartment. You almost got us killed. I wouldn't.
She was crying now.
Sophie, is Sophie okay? I looked at my sister, curled up in the passenger seat, dark circles under her eyes, her expensive wedding manicure now chipped and broken. She's alive. That's all that matters right now. Can I talk to her? I held the phone out to Sophie, who shook her head. Tell her I can't. Not yet. She needs time, Mom. This is my fault, Mom said quietly. I pushed her toward him. He seemed so successful, so perfect for her. I thought he'd take care of her.
No, Mom.
You thought he'd give her the life you wanted her to have. The life you never thought I could provide. That's not. It is. It's exactly that. And now we're all paying for it. I hung up. Sophie finally spoke. We can't keep running. I'm tired, Claire. I'm so tired. I know. Maybe I should just meet him. In a public place. See what he wants. He wants you dead, Sophie. That's what the suicide note is for. Then what do?
I thought about it.
We couldn't run forever. We had limited money. Daniel had resources through Vincent's organization, and the police seemed unable or unwilling to do enough. We turn the tables, I said finally.
How?
Daniel's desperate. Vincent wants his money in. I check my phone. 12 hours. Daniel can't pay. So he's going to run or die. Either way, he needs us out of the picture first, so we can't testify. So we make him think he's won. You agree to meet him, but we control where and when. Claire, no. Hear me out. We pick somewhere public, with security cameras. We have Detective Martinez on standby. You wear a wire. He threatens you on tape, violates the restraining order on camera, and goes back to jail. This time no bail. And Vincent. Vincent's problem is with Daniel, not you. With Daniel in jail, Vincent has no reason to come after us. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. It's dangerous. Everything's dangerous now. But at least this way, we're not just waiting for them to find us. She nodded slowly. Okay, but where? I thought about it, then smiled grimly. The Beverly Hills Hotel, where you had your wedding reception. Sophie looked at me in surprise. Why there? Because it's public, full of security, and more importantly, Daniel won't be able to resist the symbolism. The place where his perfect marriage was celebrated becomes the place where it truly ends. Sophie called Daniel back. He answered immediately. Changed your mind, sweetheart? The Beverly Hills Hotel. The Polo Lounge. 2 hours. Come alone.
No.
Claire comes too, but she'll stay at the bar. This is between you and me. He was quiet, considering.
Fine.
But if I see cops? You won't. 2 hours, Sophie. Don't be late. After he hung up, I called Detective Martinez, explaining the plan. She wasn't happy, but agreed to have undercover officers in place. This is dangerous, Claire. If something goes wrong, something's already wrong. This is our chance to end it. We used the last of my savings to buy Sophie a new outfit. Nothing fancy, just clothes that weren't wrinkled from sleeping in the car. She needed to look composed, in control. The wire Detective Martinez provided was tiny, hidden in her bra. As we drove to Beverly Hills, Sophie stared out the window. Remember when we were kids? You always protected me. That's what big sisters do. No, it's what you do. Mom never protected either of us, not really. She just threw money at problems or pretended they didn't exist. But you actually showed up. Sophie, I need to say this. In case something happens. The wedding, excluding you, it was the worst thing I've ever done. Worse than marrying Daniel, worse than the debt, worse than everything. Because you're the only person who ever really loved me. Not my image or my Instagram or my potential. Just me. Nothing's going to happen, I said firmly. You're going to be fine. But as we pulled up to the hotel, I saw Vincent Zhao's black Mercedes in the parking lot. He was here too. Sophie. I see it. It's okay. Let's end this. The Polo Lounge was exactly as Sophie had described from her reception. Old Hollywood glamour, soft lighting, the gentle clink of expensive glassware. Several of the waitstaff recognized Sophie, their eyes widening at her appearance. No makeup, hair pulled back, the opposite of the glowing bride from 3 weeks ago. Daniel was already there, at a corner table, wearing the same suit from their wedding photos. The symbolism made me sick. I positioned myself at the bar, close enough to watch but far enough to seem uninvolved. I spotted at least 2 undercover officers, one reading a newspaper, another having coffee alone. Sophie sat down across from Daniel. Through the wire, I could hear every word on my phone. "You look tired, sweetheart," Daniel said. "What do you want?"
Direct.
"I like it. Here's the deal. You're going to withdraw the charges. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Then you're going to liquidate your mother's life insurance loan, the one she took for our apartment, and give me the cash. That's only $24,000. You owe Vincent $50. I'll figure out the rest. That's not your concern. And if I refuse?" He leaned forward. "Then tonight you follow through on that suicide note. Tragic young influencer. Overwhelming debt. The shame of a failed marriage. Everyone will believe it. You're threatening to kill me. In public. While violating a restraining order. I'm having coffee with my wife. Working through our problems. That's what everyone here sees." I saw movement by the entrance. Vincent Zhao walked in, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Daniel. Daniel went pale. "He's early," Daniel muttered. Vincent approached the table, pulling up a chair. "Mr. Chen. Mrs. Chen. Having a reconciliation?" "Vincent, I said I'd have your money. In 12 hours.
Yes.
But you see, I don't believe you. You've been running for me for months, and now your wife here has involved the police. That changes things." Sophie spoke up, her voice stronger than I expected. "I don't owe you anything. That loan was fraudulent. Daniel forged my signature." Vincent smiled coldly. "Perhaps. But fraud is hard to prove, and I'm not a patient man." He pulled out his phone, showing them a photo. It was Mom's house. "Nice home. Your mother lives alone." Sophie's composure cracked. "Leave her out of this." "Then someone pays."
Today. Now.
Daniel grabbed Sophie's wrist. "Give him the money." "I don't have any money. You took everything." The undercover officers were moving, sensing the escalation. But before they could intervene, Daniel pulled something from his pocket, a small knife, pressing it against Sophie's ribs under the table. "Smile," he hissed. "We're walking out of here together." But Sophie, my baby sister who I'd always protected, who'd spent her whole life being saved by others, did something unexpected. She laughed. Loud enough that everyone in the restaurant turned to look. "You're pathetic," she said, her voice carrying. 3 weeks ago, you were my Prince Charming. Now you're just a desperate con man with a knife, trying to threaten me in the same place we celebrated our wedding. Shut up."
No.
She stood up, the knife visible now, causing gasps from nearby tables. "Everyone look. This is my husband, Daniel Chen. He stole my identity, emptied my accounts, and now he's threatening me with a knife because he owes this man," she pointed at Vincent, $50,000 he borrowed in my name. The undercover officers rushed forward. Daniel tried to run but didn't make it 2 steps before being tackled. Vincent stood calmly, adjusting his suit. "This doesn't change anything," he said quietly to Sophie. "The debt remains." Detective Martinez appeared, badge visible. "Vincent Zhao, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and threatening behavior." Vincent laughed. "You have nothing. We have everything," Martinez said, nodding to Sophie, who pulled out the wire. "Including you threatening Mrs. Chen's mother." As they led both men away, Daniel screaming about betrayal and Vincent maintaining his cold silence, Sophie collapsed into a chair. I rushed over, holding her as she shook. "You did it," I whispered. You saved yourself. No, she said, looking up at me. We did it. Together. The restaurant slowly returned to normal, the Beverly Hills crowd pretending nothing had happened, though I knew Sophie's story would be all over social media within hours. Claire? Sophie said quietly. Can we go home? Your apartment?
No.
Your apartment. Home. As we walked out, past the remnants of wedding flowers from someone else's celebration, Sophie stopped. The earrings, she said suddenly. The pearl earrings you bought me. I never got to wear them. You will, I promised. At my wedding. As my maid of honor. She smiled for the first time in days. You're not even dating anyone. Details. The point is, you'll be there. Front and center. Where family belongs. We drove home in silence, but it was a different silence than before. Not the emptiness of exhaustion or fear, but the quiet of survival, of making it through the storm. Daniel would face years in prison for fraud, assault, and violating the restraining order. Vincent's organization would crumble under federal investigation. The debts in Sophie's name would take years to resolve, but with the fraud proven, she had a chance. But that was all tomorrow's problem. Tonight, my sister was safe.
Tonight, she was home. Tonight, that was enough.
The call came at 2 a.m., 3 days after Daniel's arrest. You need to get downtown.
Now.
Detective Martinez's voice was tight with urgency. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. What happened? Is Daniel out?
No.
But his lawyer posted bail for Vincent Zhao 6 hours ago. And Claire, Daniel's dead. The words didn't compute.
What?
Apparent suicide in his cell. But that's not why I'm calling. We found a letter in his belongings. For Sophie. And there's something else. Vincent's men just showed up at your mother's house. I shook Sophie awake, already pulling on clothes. We need to go. What's wrong? Everything. The drive to the police station was surreal. Daniel dead. Vincent free. Mom in danger. It felt like the nightmare was starting all over again, except this time, we'd lost our leverage. Detective Martinez met us in the lobby, her face grim. Before I show you the letter, you need to know, we don't think Daniel killed himself. Sophie gripped my hand. Vincent.
Possibly.
Or someone working for him. The security footage conveniently glitched during the relevant time frame. She led us to an interview room and placed an evidence bag on the table. Inside was a handwritten letter on legal pad paper. Sophie. It read, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Vincent won't let me live after what happened at the hotel. But you need to know, the debt isn't $50,000. It's $500,000. The papers you found were fake, designed to make you feel safe enough to come forward. The real contract is in a safety deposit box at Bank of America, branch 447. Your signature is on it. Not forged. You signed it at what you thought was our prenup. I drugged your champagne at the celebration dinner. You don't remember.
Vincent owns you now.
Not just the debt, but you. The contract includes a personal guarantee clause. If you can't pay in cash, you pay in service. 2 years working for his entertainment business. You know what that means.
I'm sorry.
Not for what I did, but for getting caught. You were supposed to die looking like a suicide, and I was supposed to collect the insurance. Clean and simple. But your sister ruined everything. Tell Claire she should have minded her own business. Now you'll both pay. Forever yours, Daniel. Sophie stared at the letter, her face blank with shock. Entertainment business? Human trafficking, Detective Martinez said quietly. Vincent Zhao runs one of the largest rings on the West Coast. We've been trying to nail him for years. But the contract, if I really signed it, signed under false pretenses while drugged, it would never hold up in legitimate court. But Vincent doesn't use legitimate courts. My phone buzzed. Mom calling. Mom, Claire, there are men here. They say Sophie owes them money. They want to come in. Don't open the door. Call 911. I did. They said units are on the way. But Claire, these men, they have guns. I put her on speaker so Martinez could hear. Mrs. Matthews, this is Detective Martinez. Keep your doors locked. Don't engage with them. Officers are 3 minutes out. We heard glass breaking. Mom screamed. "They're inside," she cried. "They're—" The line went dead. Sophie was already running for the door, but Martinez stopped her. "You can't go there. That's what they want. That's our mother. And you running into danger won't save her. Let my officers handle it." The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. Martinez's radio crackled with updates. Officers on scene, suspects fleeing, one person in custody. Then, finally, one civilian, minor injuries, requesting ambulance. Minor injuries. Mom was alive. We met her at the hospital. She looked small in the hospital bed, a bandage on her forehead where flying glass had cut her, her arm in a sling from falling while trying to run. "Mom," Sophie said, rushing to her side. Mom looked at her, then at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw her see us clearly. Really see us. "I almost got you killed," she whispered. "Both of you." I was so blinded by what I wanted Sophie to be that I pushed her into danger. "And you, Claire, you tried to warn us. You've always tried to protect us. And I treated you like you were jealous. Petty." "Mom. No, let me say this. That man, Daniel, he fooled me because I wanted to be fooled. I wanted Sophie to have the fairy tale, the rich husband, the perfect life. But look what my fantasy cost." Sophie was crying. "It's not your fault. I chose him. Because I taught you to choose men like him. Charming, flashy, promising the world. Just like your father." I frowned. "Dad wasn't like that." Mom laughed bitterly. "Not your father. Sophie's father. My first husband, Richard." Sophie and I exchanged shocked looks. "What? You didn't think it was strange that your father loved you both equally even though Claire wasn't his biological daughter? Tom married me when Claire was 2, knowing I was pregnant with another man's child. Richard was handsome, wealthy, exciting. He was also a gambler who left me with nothing but debt when he disappeared." "Mom," I said slowly, "are you saying Dad wasn't my biological father?" "Tom was your father in every way that mattered. He loved you from the moment he met you. Loved us both enough to take on Richard's debts, to raise Sophie as his own even though she was a reminder of my mistakes." She looked at Sophie. "You have Richard's eyes, his charm. And I was so afraid you'd have his weaknesses that I overcompensated, gave you everything, tried to protect you from consequences. Instead, I just taught you that consequences didn't apply to you." "And me?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "You are Tom's mirror, responsible, steady, reliable. I resented you for it. You reminded me that I was the weak one, the one who'd fallen for a con man, who needed rescue. Every time I looked at you, I saw my own failures." The room was silent except for the beeping of machines. "I'm sorry," Mom said finally, "to both of you, but especially to you, Claire. You deserved better." Before any of us could respond, Detective Martinez appeared in the doorway. "We have a problem. Vincent's lawyer is here. He wants to make a deal." The lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Wong, laid out Vincent's terms in the hospital conference room. "My client is willing to forgive all debts and cease any collection activities in exchange for one thing. Sophie publicly states that Daniel acted alone, that Mr. Zhao had no knowledge of the fraudulent contracts or any illegal activities." "Absolutely not," I said immediately. "Claire," Sophie said quietly, "maybe we should consider."
No.
"We're not letting him walk away from this." Patricia smiled coldly. "The contract Sophie signed, regardless of the circumstances, is legally binding in certain jurisdictions. International jurisdictions where Mr. Zhao has significant business interests. She could be arrested the moment she leaves the country." "She won't leave the country," I said. "Ever? For the rest of her life? No honeymoons, no vacations, no business trips? That seems limiting for someone so young." "Your client is a human trafficker," Detective Martinez interjected. "Alleged. Never proven. And frankly, irrelevant to this discussion. Sophie owes my client $500,000. That's fact. How she pays, or if she pays, that's negotiable." Sophie stood up. "I want to talk to him." I need to face him. To end this. An hour later, we sat in a secure room at the police station, Vincent Zhao across from us, his lawyer beside him. He looked exactly like what he was, a predator in an expensive suit. Mrs. Chun, he said smoothly, my condolences on your husband's passing. You killed him, Sophie said flatly. That's a serious accusation. I was in custody when he died, as I'm sure you know. Your people then?
He shrugged.
Daniel owed many people money. Any one of them might have decided he was worth more dead than alive. These things happen in his line of work. What do you want? I asked. He turned to me, his eyes cold. What I've always wanted. My money. Your sister borrowed $500,000. Daniel borrowed it, using fraud. The signature is hers. The identification provided was hers. The debt is hers. He leaned back. But I'm not unreasonable. I understand she was misled. So I'm offering a compromise. $250,000. Half. Paid over 5 years. $50,000 a year. That's more than fair. She doesn't have it, I said. Then she'll earn it. She's young, attractive, has a social media following. There are many ways to monetize those assets. The implication hung in the air like a threat. Sophie suddenly laughed. You know what?
No.
Vincent's eyebrows raised.
No. No.
I'm not paying you anything.
Swimmy.
Take me to court. Real court. Not your back alley arbitration. Let's put everything on record. The forged documents, the drugged signature, Daniel's confession letter, your threats against my mother. Let's see how that plays out in front of a judge. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying Daniel. But that's over now. You have no power over me. Vincent stood, his composure cracking. You think you're safe because you're in a police station? You think this ends here? I have resources you can't imagine. And I have something you don't, Sophie replied. Nothing left to lose. You already took everything. My money, my husband, my dignity. What's left to threaten? Your family will be in protective custody, Detective Martinez interrupted. All of them. And Mr. Zhao, you're now on record threatening witnesses in an ongoing federal investigation. I'd think carefully about your next moves. Vincent straightened his tie. This isn't over. Yes, Sophie said firmly, it is. As Vincent and his lawyer left, Sophie collapsed into her chair, the bravado draining away. That was incredibly brave, I said. And incredibly stupid. Maybe. But I'm done being afraid. I spent 3 weeks married to a monster, and before that, 26 years afraid of not being perfect. I'm done. Detective Martinez cleared her throat. There's something else. We've been investigating Vincent for years. With Daniel's death and the evidence you've provided, we might finally have enough to bring RICO charges. But we need your testimony. That puts a target on her back, I protested. It does. Which is why we're offering witness protection. New identities, new location, completely fresh start. Sophie looked at me. All of us. If needed, yes. I thought about my job, my apartment, the life I'd built in LA. Then I looked at Sophie, my sister who'd excluded me from her wedding, who'd treated me as less than for years, who'd nearly gotten us all killed. My sister, who was also the little girl I'd protected from nightmares, who'd held my hand at Dad's funeral, who'd finally seen me for who I was. We need to think about it, I said. 6 months later, I stood in a courtroom in downtown Los Angeles, watching Vincent Zhao get sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Sophie sat in the witness box, her hair now its natural brown, wearing a simple black dress I'd helped her pick out from Target. She testified for 3 days, detailing everything. The marriage, the fraud, the threats, the fear. She'd been magnificent. The defendant will rise, the judge commanded. Vincent stood, his expensive suit unable to hide what he really was anymore. Mr. Zhao, you've been found guilty on all counts: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and human trafficking. The court sentences you to 35 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sophie's story had gone viral. The influencer whose dream wedding became a nightmare, whose perfect life was revealed as a lie. But she didn't run from the cameras this time. I was living in a fantasy, she told them. A fantasy that nearly killed me and destroyed my family. If sharing my story saves even one person from making the same mistakes, then something good will have come from this nightmare. We pushed through the crowd to where Mom waited by my car. The three of us had been in witness protection for 4 months, living in a small house in Oregon under different names. But with Vincent's conviction, we could reclaim our lives, or what was left of them. Home? Mom asked. Yeah, Sophie said. Home. But home wasn't Los Angeles anymore. We'd decided to stay in Oregon, to build something new from the ashes of our old lives. Sophie worked at a local coffee shop now, making minimum wage plus tips. Her Instagram account was gone, deleted along with the fantasy life it portrayed. She lived in a studio apartment above the shop, 5 blocks from the house Mom and I shared. I know it's not much, she'd said when she first showed me the apartment. But it's mine. Really mine. Paid for with money I earned. It's perfect, I'd told her and meant it. I'd found work with a small architecture firm in Portland, a 40-minute commute, but worth it for the fresh start. My new colleagues didn't know about Sophie's story, didn't know about the wedding I wasn't invited to or the nightmare that followed. I was just Claire, the competent architect who brought homemade cookies on Fridays. Mom had perhaps changed the most. She volunteered at a women's shelter now, counseling victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud. I spent so many years blind to the signs, she'd explained. Maybe I can help others see them sooner. The doorbell rang on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after Vincent's sentencing. Sophie and I were cooking dinner, a new tradition, Thursday dinners where we tried recipes from a cookbook Dad had loved. It was a delivery driver with a package. No return address, but postmarked from Los Angeles. Inside was a small box and a letter. Dear Claire and Sophie, my name is Margaretchen. Daniel was my son. I know I have no right to contact you, no right to ask for your understanding. What my son did was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that not everything about him was a lie. He did love you, Sophie, in his broken way. The mental illness that drove his actions, the narcissism, the complete lack of empathy, it destroyed any chance he had at real connection. But in his lucid moments, rare as they were, he spoke of you with something approaching genuine emotion. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not making excuses. I failed him as a mother, ignored the warning signs, enabled his behavior by cleaning up his messes for too long. By the time I stopped, it was too late. The box contains something that belongs to you, your grandmother's pearls, the ones Claire bought for Sophie's wedding gift. Daniel had them in his possession when he died. I thought you should have them back. I'm sorry for everything. For the pain my son caused, for the fear you lived in, for the family moments that were stolen from you. I hope someday you find peace. Margaretchen. Sophie held up the pearl earrings, their luster unchanged by everything they'd witnessed. You should wear them, I said. They're yours. No, Sophie said, handing them to me. They're ours. We'll share them. Important occasions only. Like what? Like your promotion next month. I laughed. I haven't gotten a promotion. You will. The senior architect position. I heard your boss talking about it when I brought you lunch last week. You mean when you were flirting with a receptionist? Sophie grinned. I can multitask. Mom came in from the kitchen, flour in her hair from attempting to make bread. What's that? We showed her the letter, the earrings. She read it twice, then sat down heavily. That poor woman, she said finally. Imagine watching your child become a monster and not knowing how to stop it. You can't feel sorry for her, Sophie protested. I can and I do. I nearly watched the same thing happen to you, Sophie. Not the monster part, but the losing yourself to a fantasy. If Claire hadn't fought for you, if she hadn't saved you despite everything. I saved myself, Sophie said quietly. With help. But ultimately I had to choose to leave, choose to testify, choose to rebuild. She was right. The Sophie who'd excluded me from her wedding, who'd lived for likes and follows, who'd believed she was better than everyone, that Sophie was gone. In her place was someone harder but more real, someone who'd faced the worst and survived. "I've been thinking," Sophie said, "about starting a blog. Not Instagram, not curated perfection. Just honest stories about rebuilding after trauma. About the reality of starting over with nothing." "That's a good idea," I said. "I want to call it Uninvited. About all the people who get excluded, pushed aside, forgotten. The ones who weren't on the list, but who show up anyway when it matters." I thought about the wedding invitation that never came, the photos I'd scrolled through of a celebration I wasn't part of, the bitter taste of exclusion that had started this whole journey. "Perfect," I said. 2 years have passed since that night. Sophie's blog has 30,000 subscribers now, not Instagram influencer numbers, but real people who find hope in her brutal honesty about recovery, debt, and starting over. She still works at the coffee shop, but she also speaks at women's shelters, colleges, anywhere people will listen to her story. Mom sold the house in LA, used the money to pay off the debts from Sophie's apartment lease. She lives simply now, but seems happier than I've ever seen her. Last month, she started dating a fellow volunteer from the shelter, a quiet widower named Jim, who brings her flowers every Friday. And me? I got the senior architect position. I'm designing a women's shelter now, a project that feels like coming full circle. Sometimes I work late, and Sophie brings me dinner, sitting with me while I explain blueprints she pretends to understand. The pearl earrings sit in a safety deposit box we share. Sophie wore them to my promotion dinner. I wore them when she received an award from the National Domestic Violence Coalition for her advocacy work. We'll wear them again at Mom's wedding next spring. She doesn't know Jim's planning to propose, but Sophie and I have seen the ring. Sometimes I think about the wedding I wasn't invited to, that $73,000 fantasy that started this nightmare. The photos still exist somewhere in the digital ether. Sophie in her designer dress, Daniel in his custom suit, everyone smiling at a lie. But I also think about what came after. The desperate call that forced us to see each other clearly. The nights spent running from danger. The moment Sophie stood up in that restaurant and refused to be a victim anymore. The courtroom where she faced down a monster and won. She excluded me from her wedding, but life made sure she couldn't exclude me from her truth. In the end, that's what family really is, not the people in the wedding photos or the Christmas cards, not the ones who show up for the easy celebrations. Family is who answers the phone at 2 a.m., who drives through the night to save you from yourself, who stands between you and danger, even when you don't deserve it. Sophie taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the hurt. It's about choosing connection over righteousness, healing over anger, hope over bitterness. She may have said the wedding was yesterday, and I didn't make the list. But when it mattered, when life stopped being a performance and became about survival, I was the first person she called. And I always will be. What would you have done? Saved the sister who said you didn't matter, or let her face the consequences alone? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more raw, real stories about the complicated truths of family relationships.